Me and Rachel have both come up with our own top 5 opening scenes to a movie. Did you have any honourable mentions?
Yeah, so there were a couple that almost made my list that I just didn't put on because the ones that I've got are a little bit more personal to me and ones that I love a bit more. But The Dark Knight, obviously, because that is such a great
that's
opening.
Very good opening.
Yeah, that beautiful shot of just, Heath Ledger standing there with the mask and the entire bank robbery, and then the revelation that it's the Joker all along, and then I love that final shot of the school buses, just pulling out to join the rest of the school buses. It's a great scene. It's full of tension. Just missed out on that. And I, of course, have to mention the opening from Halloween, 1978, which is one of my favorite horror movie openings, but it is also just a great opening scene. Obviously, we've talked about that point of view scene of, young Michael coming in through the house and killing his sister. And of course, if you've never seen the movie, you don't know who the killer is. And then you get the reveal of, oh my God, it's this 6-year-old boy. Like, wow, it's just such a wham moment. And again, obviously the movie is very classic now, but back in the day, it was a very, very effective opening. And then I was going to add this last one just because someone I follow did a video on it recently. And their video pointed out a lot of stuff that I had never really considered. And I went, oh, yeah, it actually is a really fun opening. And that's the opening to Legally Blonde, which actually has a really fun montage showing the atmosphere that Elle lives in. You get these beautiful shots of Elle Woods without actually seeing her face. So you get this idea of who she is, her color pink, the way she lives in the sorority house. So you get this indication that something big is happening for her that night because all the girls are signing a card for her. And it's set to this beautiful song called Perfect Day, which obviously just sets the tone for that movie absolutely perfectly, and really embodies Elle Woods' character. So those 3 were ones that almost made my list, but just got edged out by these ones.
There was a few. I mean, Halloween, I think I'd considered it. Yeah, sets the tone so well for the movie, and it's such a shocking opening. Definitely Scream, I considered, again, makes a really big impact, and yeah, just once again changed the horror genre, really. That opening scene and what Scream was. Also Basic Instinct, because
oh my God.
it's very noir, very stylish and sleazy, and
oh dear.
who couldn't love intense shagging, which then leads to a person being killed by an ice pick at the climax.
Fair enough. That is a very impactful scene.
So that's an honourable mention. And I think, well, one of the Indiana Jones movie, Temple of Doom, was also, I considered that because I really love that sort of fantastical musical opening that they do, and it's so immersive. Like Spielberg really nails his openings to movies, especially classic Spielberg.
To start off with a pick that's not actually that obvious. It's from a movie that's not the most groundbreaking movie or anything like that, but it was a very big hit, and that is the opening scene to the wonderful comedy The Devil Wears Prada. So I think that the first like 10 to 15 minutes of this film are so well done. So the movie opens with Anne Hathaway, and we have this great song, Suddenly I See by Katie Tunstall, which was very big about 10 years ago. And you get this great montage of Anne Hathaway's character, who the script describes as young, eager, but very green, which you definitely get the idea that Andy is, she's a newly hatched chick. And you see her in her little Brooklyn apartment getting ready for work. But the brilliant thing is they juxtapose this and intercut it with girls from the magazine that she's going to work for. I've completely forgot. Runway magazine. And so they use this juxtaposition to show the difference between Andy and this world that she's going to enter. So you see Andy put on like plain underwear. Then you see these girls put on these very fancy matching lingerie set. You see Andy put on chapstick. You see these girls putting on makeup. You see Andy say goodbye to her boyfriend. You see the girls say goodbye to their partners. So it's showing that, like, all of these women have these very rich lives, but it's a very, very different world that Andy is going into. And I think it's just a great montage. Then we get to the magazine. She meets Emily, played by Emily Blunt, who is absolutely fantastic, one of her earliest roles. And then we get the beautiful lead up to when Miranda Priestley enters the office. So you see Emily look at her phone. All of a sudden, her face turns to abject terror. She's all like, oh my God, no. Then Stanley Tucci's character is like, everyone gird your loins. And you get this great little flurry of activity, which really emphasizes how terrifying Miranda Priestley is, how well run the magazine is, and the intro to Miranda. They do this beautiful slow motion shot of her, you know, her designer heel coming out of the car. Then you get the big handbag with, of course, Prada splashed right across the front because this is the devil and she's wearing Prada. Then you have this great moment where she goes into the lobby and this girl gets into an elevator before Miranda. Miranda walks into the elevator and the girl says, "Sorry, Miranda," and ducks out. So it's just a great introduction to Andy's character, to Miranda's character. Then you get that iconic shot of the elevator doors opening and just, you know, Meryl Streep with her sunglasses, you know, becoming Miranda Priestley. And I just really think that it like I said, it really sets the character of Andy. It really shows that she's going into a world that she is not prepared for. It really establishes the terror that Miranda brings and what Andy needs to expect for the movie. And I think it just sets up those two characters and their dynamics so well. And it's just such a fun opening. It's got some great music and it's shot really, really well. And it's very effective. You know, it's all like 10, 15 minutes in this really nice, tightly edited sequence, and I think it just really leads into the movie really well. And The Devil Wears Prada is one of my comfort movies. You know, it's one of those movies that you watch on a Sunday afternoon when you just want to put something light and easy on. Great performances from Annie Hathaway and Emily Blunt, and of course Meryl Streep as Miranda Priestley. So that's my first pick, the opening to The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I still haven't seen it. It's one I need to see. It's been on the list to see for a while, yeah. And I know when it came out, like Emily Blunt was pretty much unknown, so it was a role which put her on the radar to look out.
She is fantastic in this role. So when you do see it, you'll have to let me know what you think of her performance.
Yeah, and over February, we did watch that really lame streaming movie, Upgraded, which has
with Camilla Mendes from Riverdale. Yeah, that one does look pretty bad.
Yeah, who I like a lot, but I mean, yeah, it wasn't.
I do too.
Wasn't the best film or role for her, but that felt like a very sort of Devil's Wear Prada.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yes, it did have that air to it, definitely. Yeah.
Number 5 is actually a very recent film, so it's a little bit of a wild card. But my number 5, and I went for it partly because it had a very different sort of opening for this franchise. But my number 5, is the most recent James Bond film, which is No Time to Die.
Mm-hmm.
And I went with this because, spoilers for the opening and for the film if you haven't seen it, but it actually opens in the past with the Madeline Swan character, who's like Lee Sedano's character, who's in the present, she's in a relationship with Bond. But it turns out she has a history with the villain of the film, played by Remy Malik, which dates back to her childhood. So it really throws you off guard when you first put the film on, and it actually starts with her as a kid. And it takes a bit of time to realize who this is and why this is significant. And it's such a different way to introduce the villain of the movie with this backstory, and you get to know more about Madeline Swan in the process. And I like her character a lot. I like Lee Sedano a lot. And it was just such a surprising way to open a Bond film. And it was, in a way, a statement, like saying this is a shift up of what you would normally expect from a Bond film, because we are going to give this important, like, opening scene to, like, the female character. And it just sets up so much for the film. And it's really suspenseful, really edge of your seat type stuff, because you're wondering what's going to happen to this young girl when she's like confronted by this really scary villain. And it's very cinematic and beautifully filmed. A different way to open a Bond film, which is something I really appreciated. And it was definitely a statement of intent and a beautiful way into the film. And then, of course, you get the Bond theme as you do. There's actually a nice cut into the present, and it sort of leaves you on a bit of a cliffhanger, because there's a scene with her on the ice where, again, before you know who this is, you're wondering, what's going to happen to the girl? Is she going to be, is she dead? Basically, it sort of leaves that open, and then you jump into the present with her as a grown-up with Bond. So, and then you get a really good opening and the theme tune, which was, I go up and down on Billie Eilish, but I did like her Bond theme. I thought it captured, the very moody, classic sort of Bond type ballads, which you think of as being the best sort of Bond theme. So really impressive opening to a film, and quite different for a Bond film. So that's my number 5, No Time to Die.
Nice. Well, I think I've mentioned this to you, but I don't know if I mentioned it on camera, but this was the first and the only Bond film that I've seen. I never saw a James Bond movie growing up. And I mean, I didn't, it's not 100% my type of film, but for what it was, I thought it was all right. And I do remember the opening being quite intense. I saw it at the cinema, and so that's definitely, I might have to go back and have a rewatch. But I remember when I was watching it, I was like, oh, okay, so James Bond is basically just like an action film, just with a little bit more suaveness. And Steven's like, yeah, pretty much. It's like, okay, cool. Well, I didn't know that, but yeah, no, that's a good pick, and at least I can actually comment on it, because, like I said, if it had been any other James Bond film, I'd have no idea. So that's actually kind of cool that it is the one that I have seen.
Et tu veux encore à manger?
J'ai soif, mon homme.
Toi, tu manges trop parce que t'es déprimée.
Madeleine!
Non, ton papa, il tue les gens.
Maman!
Laisse-moi!
Is Mr. White home?
No, he's gone.
My name is Luigi Versafi.
to show that the blood you bleed is just the blood you own. We were a pair, but I saw you there. Too much to bear. You were my life, but life is far away from fair. That I've fallen for a lie. You were never on my side. Fool me once, fool me twice. Hired at the paradise. Now you never see me cry. There's just no time to die.
Number 4 is from a movie that I have a very love-hate relationship with. It's an adaptation of a story that I love, but it's an adaptation that I don't particularly jive with, but it's also by a director that I absolutely love. So now that we have built up all the intrigue, my number 4 pick is the opening to Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. So I am a massive Romeo and Juliet fan, just to be a cliche, and be a bit basic, but I love the story of Romeo and Juliet. And my favorite adaptation is actually the 1968 Franco Zeffirelli version. However, the Luhrmann version, which came out in the mid-90s, I love this opening. So first of all, obviously, the Luhrmann version is set in modern times, and the opening very cleverly uses this because it opens with a TV screen in the middle of a black screen. You have a little small TV, and a news reporter is doing the opening monologue. The two households both alike in dignity, and I just think that's such a clever way to introduce the modern aspect of the movie while still getting that opening monologue in. So she does the full monologue, and then we get classic Baz Luhrmann style, over the top, music and these big sweeping shots of Verona Beach. He introduces both the Capulets and both the Montagues, which I think is actually very clever, because I've always maintained that Romeo and Juliet is a story about war and the children that get caught in the middle. So I really like that Luhrmann opens it not with the lovers, but with their families, to emphasize the war that's going on between them. And then we get another voiceover doing the opening monologue in a more Shakespearean accent. And of course, we get that classic Baz Luhrmann thing of the really fast shots, and you get basically the entire movie in like a minute, in a series of really fast, like, frames with that beautiful orchestral music, and it's just really intense, and it builds, and it really throws you right into the movie. And whether or not you like the adaptation, like I said, I tend to be a bit on the fence about this one. I think I really do love and hate it in equal measure, just for varying reasons. But that beautiful opening, like I said, it's classic Baz Luhrmann. It's big, it's dramatic, and it really sets the scene for this 2-hour-long emotional roller coaster that you're about to go on. And like I said, Baz has this habit of, he likes to give away his movies at the beginning. He does it with Strictly Ballroom. He does it with Moulin Rouge. But there's something about the way that he gives you the story that makes you go, damn it, I want to see what happens. So even though you know what's coming, he manages to pique your interest in such a way that you still want to watch the movie. And so I think that this is just such a strong opening, such a clever way of using the modern setting. I've always loved Baz's cinematography. I know it's not for everyone. He does like to use a lot of zooms, a lot of fast shots, a lot of cuts. His editing is very frenetic, but I think that it works. And I think that the types of movies that he makes, it really works for those movies. One day we'll have to, I think, talk about Romeo and Juliet, because I have so much to say about this movie and the various adaptations of this story. But that is my number 4 pick, the opening to Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. It's fantastic.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage.
Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scenes unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life.
Saw it when it came out, showing my age here, and I've seen it at least once or twice since, but it has been a very long time, so I can't remember the opening as such. But I remember always thinking, and it was, if you're going to do a more up-to-date version of the story and put a modern spin on it, then I think that is how you do it. Love me, love me.
Oh, yes.
Love me.
That was an earworm, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. My number 4, and this is, it goes to a personal thing in many ways, but my number 4 is the movie version of Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So this is a very simple but effective opening in many ways, because the way it opens is, a lot of it is just like the opening credits, and you get a classic Lynchian sort of jazzy, dreamy score playing over it. You've got a blue crackly TV screen, so it's really setting the mood, and it's kind of beautiful but uneasy at the same time, and you wonder where this is going. And suddenly the suspense is broken because the TV screen itself smashes, so you get like an axe smashing into it, and then you kind of cut to the town of Twin Peaks for the opening of the movie. And I think people have said then the meaning behind that is it's almost Lynch's way of saying that was the TV world and now you're getting the film world. So that's
very nice.
Smashing the TV sort of is meant to symbolize. It's kind of like, well, this isn't the TV show anymore. This is the movie of the TV, and you go into that. So yeah, there's nothing really else to say. That it's simple but effective, and it's just a memorable opening. So many of Lynch's openings are memorable.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I should have mentioned Mulholland Drive in my special mentions, because that movie has a very intense opening as well. I really like what you're saying about the the axe coming out of somewhere and smashing the TV. That's a very meta way to say this is different. This is something new. This is a different direction. Because I know that the David Lynch fandom does have. I know that there are the movie is very polarizing. There are some who love it, and there are some who hate it and say that it negates everything that the TV show had. I know that you're one of the ones that tend to love the movie, aren't you? So you land in the camp of being on the movie side.
Yeah, and that happened over time. Like, it did grow on me over time. Blue Velvet's opening is wonderful.
Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a nightmare!
With the ear, the suspense of the ear, and
Blue Velvet is a good one, Cindy, but it's also so intense. And I, after that movie, could never watch Dennis Hopper in almost anything because Frank is just like one of the most terrifying movie villains just ever. simple but effective. Sometimes that's all you need. You know, movies don't need to be over the top and special effects. Sometimes you just need an axe coming out of nowhere and smashing a TV screen to let you know that it's going to be something different. I think that's great. Number 3 comes from probably my favorite teen comedy, or definitely one of my favorite teen comedies, one of my favorite black comedies, and a movie that I've just loved for years and years and years. And that is the opening to the classic, from the classic teen movie from the 80s, Heathers. So I love Heathers. It is just such a great movie. Just fantastic black comedy. And the opening, again, one of those openings that just really manages to let you know exactly what you're in for with this movie. So it opens with the title card of Heathers, and we see the iconic red scrunchie, because the red scrunchie is a symbol of power in this movie. And we see Heather Chandler, the main one, doing her hair up. Then it cuts to, we see the 3 Heathers sitting in a backyard with croquet sticks. Now, instantly I love this, because croquet is such an old game. It's such an old-fashioned, rich white person game. So instantly we get, you know, this idea of like who these girls are and what, where they stand in society. We get the beautiful color coding of the 3 Heathers. Then, and of course, they've got this beautiful rendition of Que Sera playing over the top. So it all looks very serene and very beautiful and very plasticky. Then the 3 Heathers stand up and they walk across the yard, and we see them trample the flower bed. There's this beautiful shot of the 3 of them just deliberately stepping through the flower bed. So again, we get this indication that these girls, they might look nice and pretty, but they're not so nice. And they slowly walk across, and then they all line up. The main Heather, she gets the croquet ball and she kisses it, and then she puts it down, and then she whacks it. And then we get this great cut to Veronica, who is Winona Ryder's character, buried in the ground with just her head sticking out of the ground. The croquet ball hits her in the head, and she does the opening line of the movie, Dear Diary. And it just instantly tells you Veronica's place in the hierarchy, the Heather's place. It tells you that what we're going to see is a movie that looks really sweet and saccharine, but is actually going to be really dark and really quite edgy. And yes, Tuffy, you definitely have to see Heathers. It's such a great film. It's, again, we were talking earlier about how Cruel Intentions wouldn't be made now. Well, Heathers definitely would not be made now. There's so much that is not PC in that movie, and it's one of the reasons I love it. And I just think that opening with the bright colors and the juxtaposition of, you know, the Heathers looking all prim and proper and playing a game like croquet, but then, you know, trampling the garden bed and knocking Veronica in the head, it just instantly sets the scene and really lets you know that kind of streak of black humor that's going to run through the movie. And then the rest of the film follows, and it's just fantastic. So that is my number 3, the opening to Heathers. Just such a great little montage.
Will I be rich? Here's what she said to me. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to seize. The child in school. I asked my teacher, what should I try? The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. What will be, will be.
It's your turn, Heather. No, Heather, it's Heather's turn. Heather. Sorry, Heather.
Que sera, sera.
Dear Diary.
I actually got to see it at the cinema a few
Oh,
years
that's
ago.
awesome. I would
Yeah,
love to see it at the cinema. I keep an eye out to see if they're going to re-release it, but nothing yet.
Yeah, because I think it was like the 25th, or it might have been it's probably like the 30-year anniversary.
Yes, I would say probably the 30-year anniversary.
Because 88, so
yes, yeah.
2018, and I think that's when I saw it anyway, and I know it got a nice new edition on Blu-rays. Number 3, again, I'm sort of going back to basics, and I've already mentioned Spielberg once, and so this time I have sort of gone for a pick from his filmography, and that is the original Indiana Jones film, Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, again, this is a little bit of a twist on what you expect the opening scene to be, although a band of like sort of crooks, basically, with virtually unknown Alfred Molina. He's in the start of the film.
Wow, he must be quite young.
Yeah, he's pretty young in it, and they run into Indiana Jones, and so it's in the jungle, and you follow them at first. That they're like the first characters you follow, and it actually builds up to the first appearance of Indy, which I really like. You see him off in the shadows in this murky sort of wooded area where it's like it's the silhouette really of him in the hat with the whip, and he sort of uses the whip on one of them at one point. But I do like that. It's almost like doing what you would normally do for a monster, but for like the hero of the movie, like these Peruvian caves which are like booby trapped, and you get all sorts of the classic Indiana Jones Spielberg type stunts and action set pieces, and ultimately he gets his hands on like the golden idol that we see there in the picture, and it's sort of swept away from him at the last by this really sleazy counterpoint Rene, who becomes sort of the main villain of the film in many ways, and like Jones's opposition, and kind of represents everything that Jones opposes, like everything bad about archaeology for him. So it sets up that conflict right in the opening scene as well. But you get everything that you want from an opening to like a Spielberg adventure film. It's very cinematic. You've got the John Williams score. It's very spooky at times. Bits of it are quite scary, the opening. And it's very entertaining as well. You get a sense of like it being like a Sunday morning serial, but brought to life on the big screen. And it's always an exciting and unexpected opening to a movie. So I had to include that. It really sets the tone so well for that first Indiana Jones movie.
Very nice. I haven't seen. So that was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, and as I said, Temple of Doom was an honourable mention.
Ooh, Temple of Doom. Oh God, nightmares for just weeks when I was a child. No, I haven't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. I haven't seen a lot of the indie films, but obviously all the references. That one particular with the golden statue. There's I always think there's a Scrubs reference when they're doing a surgery, and so Turk imagines going into the stomach to like get the gallbladder or whatever that he's trying to get.
Vite aux années.
Stay out of the light.
Building up to say Spielberg, at first I was like, where's he going with this? Is he going to go with Jaws? Because Jaws has such a great opening. And then you said Indiana Jones. I was like, yeah, I know that they're a favorite of yours. So, that's very cool. Very nice. Alrighty, so up to top two. So my number two is from a movie that I know that you haven't seen, so unfortunately I am going to have to spoil the opening just a little bit for you. Okay. But this is from my favorite Quentin Tarantino film, and that is the brilliant opening to Inglourious Basterds. Yes. So Tarantino for me can be a little bit up and down. It depends on the film. But I do think that Inglourious Basterds was his peak. And he's just does such a great job. So this opening scene is a masterclass in tension. Like, just, oh my God, it's amazing. So we open on this field in France, and there is this farmer, Monsieur Lapetite, and he is outside with his daughters. And then they see this Nazi party coming. They see this car coming. And so he turns and he tells his daughters to go back in the house, and he gets himself ready to greet this Nazi who's coming to his door. And we meet our villain of the movie, Colonel Hans Landa, who is played by the brilliant Christoph Waltz. A little fun fact for this movie, the character of Hans Landa needed to speak 5 languages fluently, and Tarantino was getting to the point where he didn't know if he could even cast the role, and then Christoph Waltz came in and he could speak these 5 languages perfectly. So he is so good. So he comes into this house and he introduces himself as this Nazi, you know, Hans Landa, you know, like, oh, we're looking for Jews in the area, and we heard that there was a Jewish family, the Dreyfuses, that lived near here. Can we come inside and talk about this? So, of course, you know, you're already feeling tense because it's a Nazi, obviously, in someone's house. So he goes inside, and him and Monsieur Lapetite, they talk in French, and they talk, you know, just about, you know, what's going on in the world and everything. And at one point, there's this great moment where Lapetite is smoking a pipe, and Landa's like, oh, do you mind if I smoke my pipe? And he pulls out this massive, like, ornate pipe, you know, like, it's just brilliant. And then, you know, as the conversation continues, we start to realize, okay, this family, he knows where they are. This Lapetite guy, he knows where this family is. And as we continue the scene, we get the revelation that the family is hiding under his floorboards. So that's when we really suddenly start, oh my God, what is going to happen? Then Landa says to Monsieur Lapetite, he says, I've exhausted my French. May I switch to English? And you know that he's done that so that, and as soon as he says that, you're like, oh my God, he knows that they're there. And then you get this, it's actually, the guy who plays Monsieur Lapetite is so good because they have this beautiful long shot on him as Landa is talking, and you can just see his face crumbling as he realizes that he knows, that they know that this family is here and that this isn't going to end well for him. Then Landa stands up and says in French, thank you for your hospitality. We shall be going now. Gets everyone out of the house, and then the soldiers come in and machine gun the floor. And it's horrific because it is Tarantino. But then we see one girl escape, and she goes on to be our protagonist, Shoshana. And as she's running, Landa is calling after her, and he kind of puts up his pistol as if to shoot her, then realize, nope, I'll let her go. And he says, au revoir, Shoshana. And then we get the title card. But like I said, it is 15 minutes of pure tension, because you know, and Landa knows that he knows that these guys are there, and it's just watching, you know, the poor farmer just break down, and you think this person must be such a good person to be hiding this family in the first place, to be trying to do the right thing. And yeah, it's such a great opening. I'm sorry that I had to spoil it a little bit, because it will take away the impact when you watch it for the first time, but just such a strong opening. Really establishes Landa's character and the threat that he poses, and that he will continue to pose throughout the movie. And of course, we get Shoshana's tragic start to her story, and there are many times in the film that call back to this opening.
Est-ce la propriété de Perrier-Lapadite?
Je suis Perrier-Lapadite.
C'est un plaisir de vous rencontrer, monsieur Lapadite. Je suis le colonel SS Hans Landa. Colonel SS Hans Landa, mademoiselle, à votre service. Les rumeurs qui circulent dans le village au sujet de votre famille sont tout à fait fondées. Monsieur Lapadite, vos filles sont toutes plus jolies les unes que les autres.
Merci.
I think it's Tarantino's best, and I think that it tells such a great story, and he gets some really great performances out of this film, and Christoph Waltz in particular. I think he won the Oscar for this, and rightly so, for Best Supporting Actor. And yeah, just that opening, it is chef's kiss. So good. So that's my number 2 pick.
Yeah, I think even Tarantino cynics like this one, so it does tend to be up there for them, for the people who don't normally like his films. So. Yeah, no, that sounds like an impressive opening, so definitely have to check it out. And
don't worry, Cindy, we'll make sure that he watches it.
Diane Kruger's in it as well, isn't
Yes,
it? And I
it's very
quite
cool as
like
well.
her. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it's got a few names. Michael Fassbender as well turns up. You've obviously got Brad Pitt. Eli Roth is in there. Eli Roth plays the Bear Jew. He is fantastic. His character is
I'm
so
not
good.
so keen on that, to be honest.
I think I like it because Eli Roth is actually Jewish. So I think this,
Right,
this
okay.
movie had a little bit more of a personal link to him being able to play someone who takes out Nazis. So yeah, I think it's more the personal link. There's also another character in there who's played by a European actor who didn't want to do it because they wanted him to wear a Nazi uniform. And he was like, I don't want to do that. But they're like, okay, but while you wear this uniform, you get to rip the heads of other Nazis. And he was like, yeah, okay, cool, let's do it. Yeah, Eli Roth is fun.
No,
to me, I
Eli
agree.
Roth is a tosser.
No, I don't mind Eli Roth.
He's a self-obsessed tosser. Two is from one of my favourite indie movies of the last, let's say, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But an indie movie that always stands out to me, a lot of fun, and that is Ghost World.
Oh, I haven't seen. Oh, wait, no, I might have seen this one. Tell me a bit more about it. Let me see if I can remember this.
What, the movie or the opening?
Yeah.
The movie, it's from like a comic book, and so it's Flora Birch and her
and Scarlett Johansson.
A young Scarlett Johansson, yeah, and they sort of like to play pranks on people. They've just graduated from school, so they're at that phase where they sort of want to move in with each other and sort out what they're doing with their lives. But they're totally opposite. Like, she's more in that sort of mold, whereas Flora Birch is more of a moody, sort of angsty sort of teen who doesn't really want to do that, but they get their kicks out of like making fun of like oddball type people. So the Flora Birch character latches on to the Steve Buscemi character, who's this sort of outcast who's really in big band type records, like, and that's sort of his niche sort of obsession in life. And I think she sees that as an outlet, you know, taking an interest in his life and getting into like the music from the record that he brought from her. So it's almost like an escape in that way, and they form quite an unlikely sort of bond and things like that. And it's just this really satirical movie that has a particular like weird sort of edge to it, like a weird sort of sense of humor. I've read the comic book actually, and the comic book is like even more twisted and messed up. The comic book is very, very dark. Like, you can see why they lightened it for the movie. But the movie, did become a favourite of mine from the word go. I've got the soundtrack. The soundtrack is wonderful. It's one of my favourite soundtracks. And music, obviously, because of the setup to the movie, plays a big part, and it really has a certain, becomes like a character in itself. But just to describe the opening scene, like the Flora Birch character, Ingrid, she's in a room and she's playing on the TV, she's playing like this sort of old Indian style movie, which you see the characters
Bollywood
up on screen. Yeah, Bollywood up on screen. So it's them doing this sort of fancy, like quirky dance to this like Indian rock and roll style record. And the Flora Birch character is doing like the dance along with it, like the movement. And
she's not like,
it's a fantastic opening. It's a stage so well for her character and sort of how different and offbeat the movie is. And I guess it just sets up the fact that she has this interest in sort of very retro like, music and kind of music outside of the mainstream. So it's just a fun opening to the movie and sort of sets it up as a very different kind of movie. And there's just something about the feel of Ghost World, about the town that it's set in and the characters that they come across, where even though in many ways a lot of it is played quite straight as sort of this black coming of age like comedy, there's just something a little bit off about it, where it could just exist in almost like a fantasy sort of town, like this sort of literally a ghost sort of town.
पहचान हो जीना आसान हो जान पहचान हो जान पहचान हो जीना आसान हो
Like Laura Birch, she kind of disappeared after the 90s and didn't do as much stuff. But everything I saw her in back then, I really liked her in. So I definitely have to check that out. And I do love a good indie film. So that's cool. However, when you mentioned Bollywood, that made me remember there is another honorable mention that I have that I just want to say before I do my number one.
Okay.
And that is the opening to Bend It Like Beckham. Because Bend It Like Beckham has a really fun opening where it actually opens with Manchester United playing and you see David Beckham. And then what they do is they incorporate Paminda Nagra into the footage. So she's actually playing for Manchester United. Then it cuts back to these sports commentators watching it. And they're like, oh, and here's Jeff's Bamra. And they're like, and we've got Jess's mother here in the studio. Well, Mrs. Bamra, you must be very proud. And then she's all like, not at all. Look at her running around, showing off her legs to all the boys. And then, she starts and then it cuts back to Jess. I just thought that's such a great opening. It's such a great, little imagine spot. I love the way they incorporate Paminda Nagra into the actual footage of Manchester United. And then the Indian mother doing her spiel. I mean, I totally relate to that. She even does a hand gesture at one point, but I'm like, oh yes, every Indian kid has seen that hand gesture. And number one is, look, when I say this, you're probably going to roll your eyes because it's very basic of me and very, very typical of me because I'm going with a movie that I absolutely freaking love that we have talked about on your channel again and again and again and again. You even mentioned it during your honorable mentions, but it has to get number one for me because it's my favorite horror movie of all time and one of my favorite movies ever. And that, of course, is the brilliant opening to Scream. I mean, we've talked about this before. We did a whole big deep dive when we reviewed Scream, but that opening scene, that opening sequence is like a little horror movie in and of itself, just that thing. You could absolutely submit that as like a short film. So well done. Of course, back in 1996, you had the big surprise of, oh my God, it's Drew Barrymore. Oh, Drew Barrymore's our main character. Oh no, Drew Barrymore is now dead. And of course, that was a big surprise. I don't remember the exact time that I saw Scream for the first time, but I do remember being very shocked that Drew died so early. But the scene is just so great. Everything about it, from the ringing phone to the banter that Drew's got going back and forth between the killers until you get that moment where it's like, because I want to know who I'm looking at. It's like, what did you say? Because I want to know who I'm talking to. And then just the way the tension just ratchets up and ratchets up, the game that they make her play, the way she's running around the house, just the choreography of moving around that house. It's so well filmed. I mean, I've talked about this before, but Wes is, when it comes to filming and cinematography and the way he knows how to use the camera to tell a story, I think Wes is really up there with top filmmakers. And I think you really see that in this film. Obviously, Drew is giving a great performance. A lot of the behind the scenes stuff is really fun to watch. And apparently Craven kept telling her stories about animal cruelty to keep her crying because she's such an animal lover that he just kept telling her all these awful stories so that she would keep crying. But yeah, no, it's a really just a fantastic opening scene all the way to that reveal of her parents, finding her hanging outside. I love the little reference to Halloween, run down the street to the Mackenzies. That's a great little line there. And it's just a fantastic opening. And it really lets you know what you're in for with this film, that it's going to be a different type of horror film, that it's going to subvert your expectations, and that it's going to be frenetic and dynamic and just really fun. So like I said, I know this is probably a bit of a basic choice for me, it's getting a bit cliched at this point. Scream tends to end up on a lot of my lists that we do just because I have so much love for this film, because it's just so well made. And that starts with the opening. So there was never going to be any other opening that was number one for me. It was always going to be Scream. So there we have it.
Hello?
I'm sorry. I guess I dialed the wrong number.
So why'd you dial it again?
To apologize.
You're forgiven. Bye now.
Wait, don't hang up.
What?
I want to talk to you for a second.
They've got 900 numbers for that. See ya.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Uh-huh.
I only eat popcorn at the movies.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters?
Yeah.
What's yours?
Guess.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Is that the one where the guy had knives for fingers?
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy, that's right. I like that movie. It was scary.
Wow, well, the first one was, but the rest sucked. Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Listen, asshole!
No, you listen, you little bitch. If you hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand? Yeah. Blondie.
What do you want?
To see what your insides look like. You should never say who's there. Don't you watch scary movies? It's a death wish.
I lied. I do have a boyfriend, and he'll be here any second, so your house better be good.
Sure.
I swear. He's big and he plays football, and he'll kick the shit out of you.
I'm getting scared. I'm shaking in my boots.
So you better just leave.
His name wouldn't be Steve, would it?
For one, I've also gone with one of my favourite movies, and for your 90s classic, I'm going to give you an 80s classic.
Of course.
And it is, I think, one of the best movies of its kind and of all time. And that is Back to the Future.
Ah, nice.
So
nice.
The opening to Back to the Future is literally there on the screen, but it starts off with the alarm call for Marty McFly. So he's befriended this quirky scientist, Doc Brown, Christopher Lloyd, in the role that made him famous. And so we get the opening, which is Doc Brown has given him this elaborate sort of maze, which is going to wake him up. So every sort of stage the camera follows. So it's almost like a ball going along. At one point it feeds the dog, so Marty doesn't have to. So that's very handy.
Nice.
And you just get different shots. So you get a shot of the newspaper there. You get a shot of like the TV. So it sort of, I think, switches the TV on as like a bit of background noise. So you get various shots there. You see like the dog food, which looks really gross in that particular shot. But yeah, it just ultimately builds up to like reaching the clock tower and the wake up call. And as it turns out, Marty is already up anyway, and he's got the Battle of the Bands that day, which is one of the early scenes of the movie. And he's ready to go. He leaps on his skateboard and he's away, and we get some classic rock and roll. And it's such a fun, fresh, feel good way to open the movie. But I just think that elaborate sort of opening, which is so simple, but it just follows this elaborate like gadget and this maze. It's a really smart and different opening, and it does set up later on in the movie because, of course, the clock tower scene is so important in the movie and so iconic. So it's actually a very different way of setting that stuff up as well. So it's a beautiful opening. It's poetry in motion, and without sort of like really hitting you over the head with anything, it's just sort of, it does kind of set up so much that then you're going to see in the movie moving forward.
Statler Toyota is making the best deals of the year on all 1985 model Toyotas. You won't find a better car at a better price with better service anywhere in Hill Valley.
Denied the rumor that a case of missing plutonium was in fact stolen from their vault 2 weeks ago. A Libyan terrorist group had claimed responsibility for the alleged theft. However, officials now attribute the discrepancy to a simple clerical error. The FBI, which is still investigating the matter, has no comment.
Hey, Doc? Doc! Hello, anybody home? Oh, God. Oh, jeez.
That's our top 5 movie openings, and we encourage you guys to do your own lists. You can let us know either in the chat live or in the comments. So that was fun.
It was. And we had some variety there. And I really liked our different reasonings and the different openings that we just liked for all the various reasons. So maybe our next one should be top 5 favorite movie closing scenes. That could be fun.
that's not a bad idea. And because you know what was funny, when I was thinking about the movie, I realized the list. I realized then when you go back to a certain decade in the past, a lot of the movies, the openings were just like the opening credits.
Yes, they were.
Obviously, the Bond movies are big for that, but like, I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think during that time they had a real art to like how they presented the opening credits, and they were quite creative. But then I tried to avoid that sort of opening because I think I wanted to focus more on opening scenes in a way. But,
No, me too. I wanted to look at scenes that really kind of gave you an idea of what you were in for with the movie, you know, setting scenes for characterization or things like that. I think my only exception is the Inglourious Basterds one, which is more just because it's such a masterclass in tension and building tension. But no, they were really fun. But I think in the 90s as well, like they started to get creative with the credits. So you'd have the credits, but they'd usually go over something that would tell you something about the movie, like a montage of something, or a lot of the times they'd pan through people's houses, so you'd see, like, I'm just thinking of the opening to the movie Now and Then opens with like them panning across all the girls like dresses, so you see the different girls and their different personalities. So but there were a lot that were just credits, whereas now we're definitely getting more established opening scenes to movies. But I think closing scenes could be a fun one, because I can already think of several off the top of my head that made a huge impact. But this was really fun, so thank you for having me on for your special 1K live stream, and once again, congratulations. It's so well deserved, and we're all so happy.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I think the opening of Beetlejuice as well is a bit like that Back to the Future one I referenced. You know, that